There's a quiet revolution happening, and it doesn't need a manifesto, a protest, or a movement. It starts with a seed. What you're about to hear might change the way you eat, the way you think, and honestly, the way you feel every single day. Let's start with your body, because gardening is, at its core, a full body workout that doesn't feel like one. Digging, planting, weeding, watering, pruning, these aren't just chores. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, gardening qualifies as moderate intensity exercise, burning between 200 and 400 calories per hour, depending on the task. A landmark study published in the Medical Journal of Australia followed over 3,000 adults in their 60s and 70s over a decade. The researchers found that people who gardened regularly had a 36% lower risk of dementia than those who did not, even after accounting for physical activity levels, age, and social engagement. Think about that. Not going to the gym, not running, just gardening. And the cardiovascular benefits are real too. Research from the American Journal of Public Health found that community gardeners in New York City had significantly lower BMI and were less likely to be overweight or obese compared to their neighbors. Regular gardeners also show reduced blood pressure markers, a factor tightly linked to heart disease, the world's leading killer. But here's something that doesn't get talked about enough: soil contact. When your hands are in the earth, you're being exposed to Mycobacterium vaccae, a naturally occurring bacteria found in garden soil. Studies out of the University of Bristol and University College London found this microbe triggers the release of serotonin in the brain, acting almost like a natural antidepressant. You are literally getting a mood boost from dirt. On top of this all, regular sun exposure from gardening supports vitamin D synthesis, a vitamin that a staggering 40% of Americans are deficient in, according to research published in Nutrition Research. Vitamin D is critical for bone density, immune function, and hormonal regulation. Your garden is, quietly, one of the best gyms you will ever own. But gardening doesn't just transform your body. It does something equally powerful, maybe more powerful, to your mind. We live in an age of chronic distraction. Notifications, deadlines, feeds that never end. Our nervous systems are under a kind of sustained, low-grade assault that they simply weren't designed for. Gardening is one of the few activities that pulls you completely out of that loop. A study published in the Journal of Health Psychology in 2011 compared people who gardened versus people who read for 30 minutes after a stressful lab task. Both groups experienced stress reduction, but the gardening group showed significantly lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol and reported more complete mood restoration. This is the concept of attention restoration theory, developed by researchers Rachel and Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan. Their work showed that natural environments, and especially gardens, which combine nature with gentle purpose, give our brains a chance to involuntarily focus without mental effort, essentially rebooting our attention and reducing mental fatigue. There's also growing body evidence from horticultural therapy, the clinical use of gardening in treating mental illness. A meta-analysis of 22 studies published in Preventive Medicine Reports in 2017 found that gardening interventions significantly reduced depression, anxiety, and stress. Some psychiatric hospitals now use it alongside conventional treatment. For those managing anxiety specifically, gardening provides something rare and precious: visible, tangible progress. In a world where so many of our stressors feel abstract and uncontrollable, your bills, your boss, geopolitics, a seed that becomes a plant, that becomes food, is proof that your actions have real, measurable consequences. Psychologists call this a sense of self-efficacy, and it's foundational to mental resilience. You grow something, it grows, you eat it. That simple loop is profoundly grounding. And there's the social dimension too, particularly for older adults. Community gardens have been shown in multiple studies to combat isolation and loneliness, two factors the UK's chief medical officers have described as being as harmful to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, let's talk about what ends up on your plate, because this is where growing your own food gets genuinely eye-opening. When you buy a tomato at the supermarket, How old do you think it is? Most commercially grown produce in the United States travels an average of 1,500 miles to reach the store, according to the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture. From the moment a fruit or vegetable is harvested, its nutritional content begins to decline. Research from the University of Carolina found that spinach loses up to 50% of its folate within 8 days of harvest under refrigeration. Vitamin C degrades rapidly. Antioxidant levels drop. Store-bought isn't just less fresh, it's often less nutritious by the time it reaches you. And then there's the question of what goes on the food. A report by the Environmental Working Group found that nearly 75% of non-organic produce sold in the US carries detectable pesticide residues. Some of the most common are neonicotinoids, compounds linked in multiple studies to disruptions in the human endocrine system and suspected of contributing to the global collapse of bee populations. When you grow your own, you control everything. No synthetic pesticides, no herbicides, no preservative waxes to make apples shine on shelves for months, just soil, water, sun, and time. The flavor difference is not your imagination either. A study from the University of Florida found that modern commercial tomato varieties have been selectively bred for uniform appearance and shelf life at the direct expense of flavor compounds. They're bred to survive transit, not to taste good. When you grow an heirloom tomato in your own garden and eat it still warm from the vine, you're eating something categorically different from what you find in most stores. More nutrition, more flavor, 0 miles traveled. And here's the kicker. Your own garden costs a fraction of what you spend at the store. The National Gardening Association estimates that a family vegetable garden yields an average return of $600 in produce for every $70 invested in seeds and supplies. That's nearly a 9-to-1 return. Here's another thought worth sitting with. The global food system, the one that feeds most of us, is controlled by a surprisingly small number of large companies. Just 4 corporations now control the majority of global crop seed and agricultural chemical sales. A handful of agrochemical giants supply the vast majority of pesticides and fertilizers used in commercial farming worldwide. This isn't a conspiracy, it's business, but the consequences are real and they touch everyone. Monocultural farming, where single crops are grown over thousands of acres, produces cheap food at enormous scale. But it comes at a cost that doesn't show up at the checkout. Soil degradation, reduced biodiversity, increased dependence on chemical inputs, and the slow extinction of thousands of traditional crop varieties that sustained human population for millennia. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that 75% of the world's crop genetic diversity was lost in the 20th century alone, mostly because commercial agriculture standardized around a narrow set of high-yield varieties. We are quietly eating a narrower diet from a more fragile food system than any generation before us. Growing your own food, even a small portion of it, is a small act of opting out. It's biodiversity in your backyard. It's food sovereignty in your kitchen. You decide what grows, how it's grown, and what you put into your body. You also rebuild something our food system has almost entirely severed: the connection between people and what they eat. When children grow food, studies show that they're more likely to eat vegetables, they're more curious about nutrition, and they develop a lifelong healthier relationship with food. A UK study of primary school gardens found lasting improvements in children's vegetable consumption 2 years after the program ended. Growing food isn't anti-progress. It's one of the most intelligent responses to a food system that has optimized for shelf life over nutrition, for scale over flavor, and for profit over your long-term well-being. And then there are all the other reasons, the ones that don't fit neatly into a single category, like environmental impact. A home vegetable garden reduces food miles. Growing even a portion of your own food meaningfully shrinks your household's carbon footprint. Gardens also support local pollinators, bees, butterflies, beetles, which are critical to every ecosystem and are globally under pressure. Financial resilience. As food prices rise, and they have risen significantly in recent years, A productive garden provides a real hedge. Fresh food you don't have to buy is money that stays in your pocket. Skill and self-reliance. Knowing how to grow food is a fundamental human skill and one that's increasingly rare. That's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you could, if needed, feed yourself and your family from your own land. Connection and legacy. Gardens are one of the most powerful ways to connect across generations. Teaching a child to grow food is teaching them patience, responsibility, biology, and wonder all at once and without any curriculum. And finally, the simplest, most human reason of all. It's just beautiful. Watching something grow that you planted is a form of joy that is ancient, uncomplicated, and entirely free. You don't need a big garden or expensive equipment. A balcony will do. A windowsill will do. 3 pots of tomatoes on a patio will do. Start small. Start now. Because every expert garden started exactly here. There's a seed in the ground that doesn't know what season it is, or what country it is in, or what the news say. It only knows one direction, toward the light. Maybe we could take a lesson from this. So yeah, start your garden now.